This is 6.4 body movement notes. The essential question is, what are the terminologies used to describe body motion? There are certain methods used to name skeletal muscles, and knowing the methods will kind of help in telling you maybe the location of the muscle or the shape of the muscle, where they're attached to the bone, and what action they have. So one way that skeletal muscles are named is the direction of the fibers. The fibers can be called rectus, which means they are running vertically. They could be transverse, meaning they are running horizontally. And if you see the word oblique, it means that it's at a diagonal. Skeletal names can be named according to the size of the muscle. So when you see the word maximus, then it's going to be the largest muscle. Medius would be the medium size, and the minimus would be smaller. Sometimes there is a major and a minor that will also tell you the size of the muscle. Muscles can be named for their shape. Just like a deltoid, it means triangle because the shape of the muscle is triangular. Trapezius muscle is named so because it's almost like a diamond shape, but it looks like a trapezoid. Muscles can be named according to the location where they're located in the body. For example, temporalis is on the temple region, frontalis would be toward the forehead, occipitalis would be on the occipital bone. When you hear the word radialis, then you know it's on the radial bone. When it says ulnaris, then you know it's on the ulna. Femoris tells you that it's on the femur. Muscles can be named according to how many muscles there are, how many bellies of the muscle there are. Tricep tells you that there are 3 heads, bicep tells you that there are 2 heads, and quadricep tells you that there's 4 parts to the muscle. Muscles can be named according to where they're attached to the 2 attachment points for the muscles, or 2 or 3 attachment for the muscles. So when you see the word sterno, then you know it's attached to the sternum. When you hear the word cladoid, it means that it's attached to the clavicle. If it says tibialis, then it's attached to the tibia, and so on. Muscles can also be named according to their action. So when you see the word flexor, then you know that the action of the muscle is going to flex a certain joint. Extensor means that it's going to extend the joint. Movements at the joints have specific names. So word flexion tells you that you are moving in a direction where there is a decrease in angle. So when you have a point, an area where there is a fulcrum, and then you have 2 bones that are attached, and when you are moving in a direction where you are decreasing that angle, then that's flexion. The opposite of that movement is extension, which means that you are actually increasing that angle. So that's extension. So when you're bending at the elbow, bending at the hip, bending your knee, that's flexion. When you're straightening your knee, straightening your elbow, and straightening your hip, or moving your foot, the leg back, that's all extension. Now, hyperextension, extension means that you are going back to the 180 degrees. But when you go beyond that angle of 180 degrees, then that's what we call hyperextension. Rotation is that the bone is staying in one position and it's rotating on its long axis. So shaking your head no would be a rotation. And twisting at the waist, that will be rotation. The arm, if you are spinning your arm with your arm out to the side, that would be rotation. Abduction means that when you have a midline and you are moving away from the midline, that would be abduction. So if you had your arm to the side and you raise it up to the 90 degrees, that would be abduction. The opposite movement, when you are moving your limb toward the midline, that is adduction or adduction. Circumduction is similar to rotation, but instead of just rotating at an axis, one point of the joint, like the shoulder, is stationary and the hand is making a circular motion. That would be circumduction. You could also do that at your finger. The knuckle joint is stationary and then you are taking your index finger and doing a circular motion. That would be circumduction. Okay, pictured here at the shoulder, when you swing your arm forward like that, that is flexion. When you bring it back to its original position, that's extension. Also notice at the knee joint, when you bend and decrease that angle, that is flexion. When you go back to its original position, it's the extension. Now, when you go back into the straight mode, that is extension. But when you go beyond that 180 degrees, that is hyperextension. You could also have a flexion at the neck joint. That is flexion. When you go back to its original position, that will be extension. And when you go back further, that is hyperextension. Rotation again is basically you have a long axis and you are spinning at that axis. That is rotation. You could also have rotation at the leg where you are just spinning your foot in and out. That would be rotation. The next four terms are only used to refer to the ankle joint. So dorsiflexion is bringing your foot up, trying to meet your shin bone. That's dorsiflexion, pointing your toes up. Plantar flexion is when you're pointing your toes down. Thinking about standing on your tippy toes would be plantar flexion. Inversion is when you turn your foot, the bottom of your foot, medially toward the midline, and eversion is when you turn your foot outward. Supination and the pronation are a motion that occurs at the elbow. It is when the elbow joint is at a 90-degree angle, and when you bring your palm up, that's supination, and when you point your palm of your hand down to hit to be facing the floor, that is pronation. Opposition is when you make a circle like an OK symbol with your thumb. That's opposition. Okay, in this picture, notice this is the midline. So when you are moving away from that midline, that is abduction. You could do that with the arm or you could do that with the leg. When you bring that leg back, your arm back to the midline, that is adduction, adduction. And then also same thing with the leg. When you bring it back to the midline, that is a deduction. Circumduction is that the one point of the joint is stationary and then you make a circular motion with the joint. That is circumduction. Dorsiflexion is when you bring your foot up, and plantar flexion is when you bring it back down, like when you're standing on your tippy toe. So if this is the midline, this is your leg, this is your left leg, and this is the midline. When you bring your foot closer to the midline, notice it's the bottom of the foot is facing medially. That is inversion. When the bottom of your foot is pointing laterally, that is eversion. And then the supination is when you bring your palm up, and then when you rotate it back down, that is pronation. And then opposition is making that O symbol with the thumb and the index finger. The 6.4 notes homework is number 1, what two motions are involved in shaking and nodding your head? Number 2, what two motions are involved in making a snow angel? Number 3, what two motions are involved in using a screwdriver?